Story number 1. Ghosts on the Mountain Peak. Winter in the Himalayas is a test of endurance, both physical and mental. The towering peaks of Nepal, draped in eternal snow, have always called to me, a siren song of adventure and solitude. My name is Daniel Brooks, and what was supposed to be the climb of a lifetime became a nightmarish ordeal that I carry with me to this day. Our group consisted of 5 seasoned climbers, each with our own reasons for seeking the summit of Mount Shambhala, a peak notorious for its unpredictable weather and treacherous paths. We arrived in Kathmandu in early December, the air crisp and filled with anticipation. The locals spoke in hushed tones about the mountain's history, tales of climbers lost to unforgiving storms and mysterious disappearances that had become part of the mountain's dark lore. By mid-December, we began our ascent. The first days were filled with awe-inspiring views and the camaraderie that comes from shared hardship. However, as we climbed higher, the weather began to shift. Dark clouds gathered, and the winds picked up, foreshadowing the storm that was to come. On the 5th day, as we neared the summit, the sky turned an ominous gray. The wind howled like a pack of wolves, and the temperature plummeted. We set up camp for the night, hoping the storm would pass. But nature had other plans. The snowstorm hit with relentless fury, burying us in a blinding white abyss. Night fell swiftly. The world outside our tents reduced to a swirling maelstrom of snow and darkness. As we huddled together for warmth, a sense of unease settled over the group. It was then that we heard it, a faint, mournful wailing carried by the wind. At first, we dismissed it as the storm's cries, but the sound grew louder, more distinct, echoing through the night. "Do you guys hear that?" whispered Sarah, our group's most experienced climber. Her voice trembled with fear. I nodded, my heart pounding. It's probably just the wind playing tricks on us. But the wailing persisted, evolving into anguished screams that seemed to pierce through our very souls. One by one, we felt a presence, a cold, oppressive force that pressed in on us from all sides. Shadows danced at the edges of our vision, figures moving just beyond the reach of our flashlights. Then, amidst the chaos, we saw them, ghostly apparitions of climbers long gone, their translucent forms moving silently through our tents. Their hollow eyes stared into ours, filled with an eternal sorrow that sent shivers down my spine. The air grew thick with their unspoken anguish, a silent plea for help that resonated deep within me. "We need to stay calm," I urged, trying to steady my trembling voice. "They're just spirits. Let them be." But the spirits were not done with us. One by one, they began to manifest more clearly, their forms becoming more defined as the night wore on. It was then that Jack, our youngest member, vanished. One moment he was sitting by the fire, the next he was gone, no signs of a struggle, no footprints leading away, only the remnants of his presence scattered in the snow. Panic erupted within the group as we frantically searched our tents and the surrounding area. All we found were Jack's boots lying near the edge of a nearby cliff, the snow untouched beyond that point. It was as if he had been swallowed by the mountain itself, leaving no trace behind. Desperation set in as the storm showed no signs of relenting. We huddled together, trying to make sense of the night's horrors. The locals had warned us about the mountain's restless spirits, but we had never truly believed their stories until now. As dawn broke, the storm finally began to abate, revealing a world transformed by the night's terror. The snow had piled higher around us, and the remnants of our camp were buried under a thick layer of white. Exhausted and shattered, we knew we had to leave, but the loss of Jack weighed heavily on us. In the days that followed, we made our descent, the memory of those ghostly figures and Jack's disappearance haunting our every step. When we finally reached the base camp, we shared our story with the locals, who listened with a mixture of sorrow and vindication. They confirmed what we had feared. The spirits we encountered were indeed the souls of climbers lost to Mount Shambhala's unforgiving embrace, forever bound to the mountain by their tragic fate. The experience left me with a profound respect for the mountain and its history. We never spoke of that night again, each of us grappling with our own demons born from the encounter. Jack's disappearance remains a mystery, a lingering question that haunts me to this day. Sometimes, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I can almost hear those sorrowful screams carried by the breeze. A chilling reminder of the night we faced the ghosts on the mountain peak and the price we paid for our ambition. It serves as a testament to the enduring power of nature and the restless spirits that dwell within its icy heart. Forever watching, forever waiting. Story number 2. The Vanished House. I still remember the bitter cold of that Alaskan winter in 2010, a season where the snow seemed to swallow everything in its path, leaving behind a monochromatic landscape of white and silence. My name is Eric Johansson, and what was meant to be a routine search and rescue mission turned into an encounter with the unknown, forever altering my perception of reality. It was late January when we received the distress call. A family of 4 had gone missing during a sudden and severe snowstorm, their last known location pinpointed by a malfunctioning GPS at a secluded spot deep within the Alaskan wilderness. The coordinates led us to a small clearing, where the forest loomed ominously around us, each tree a sentinel against the relentless storm. Our team, seasoned and experienced, geared up for the treacherous conditions. The blizzard was in full force, the wind howling like a chorus of lost souls, and visibility was near zero. We trudged through knee-deep snow, our breaths visible in the frigid air, driven by the hope of finding the missing family before the storm claimed them as well. After hours of searching, we finally reached the coordinates. The storm had not relented, the snow piling higher with each passing minute. There, in the midst of the whiteout, stood what appeared to be the remnants of a small wooden house. At first glance, it seemed intact, but as we approached, a chilling realization dawned on us. It was gone. In its place were only old foundations, buried under a thick blanket of snow, and a few scattered belongings half buried in the ice. Confusion and unease settled over us as we surveyed the desolate site. The family was nowhere to be found, and there was no sign of life, no footprints leading away, no overturned furniture, nothing that suggested a struggle. It was as if the house had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only echoes of its existence. As we dug through the snow, uncovering abandoned objects like a child's teddy bear and a half-burned photograph, the reality of the situation became more unsettling. The photograph revealed a happy family, the parents and 2 children, standing in front of the very cabin we had just searched. But the date on the back read 1990, a decade before the missing family's disappearance. Puzzled, we contacted the local authorities, only to be met with a grim response. The house had been abandoned after a devastating fire in 1990, claimed by no one but rumored to have been a site of unexplained phenomena. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones about strange lights and eerie sounds emanating from the ruins, stories that had been dismissed as mere folklore. Determined to uncover the truth, I stayed behind with a few team members to investigate further. As night fell, the storm finally began to abate, leaving a haunting stillness in its wake. We set up our equipment, hoping to capture any signs of the supernatural that locals had whispered about for years. Around midnight, a piercing scream shattered the silence, echoing through the empty forest like a ghostly wail. We rushed towards the source, our flashlights cutting through the darkness, only to find nothing but the empty snow-covered grounds. The scream had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared, leaving us rattled and on edge. As we stood there, trying to make sense of the inexplicable, the temperature plummeted suddenly, our breath freezing in midair. The ground beneath our feet seemed to shift, and an unnatural fog began to rise from the snow, enveloping us in a thick, suffocating mist. Through the haze, faint figures began to materialize, shadowy apparitions of the missing family, their eyes hollow and filled with an unending sorrow. "Help us," they whispered in unison, their voices blending with the lingering echoes of the storm. The apparitions reached out towards us, their forms flickering and fading like mist. But their anguish was palpable, a sorrow that transcended the physical realm. I felt a deep sense of empathy and fear intertwine within me. These were the spirits of the family, trapped by some malevolent force that bound them to the site of their disappearance. Determined to free them, I led the team in a series of rituals we had researched, hoping to offer them the peace they so desperately sought. As we chanted and moved through the motions, the apparitions began to shimmer, their forms growing clearer and more defined. The sorrow in their eyes softened, replaced by a serene acceptance. "Thank you," they whispered, their voices now filled with gratitude. "You have set us free." With a final, collective nod, the spirits dissolved into the night, leaving behind a profound silence and a sense of closure that had been missing for decades. The old foundations of the house no longer felt oppressive, but rather a monument to the lives that had been lost and the spirits that had finally found peace. The experience left me haunted yet fulfilled, a reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. The story of the vanished house became a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the belief that even in death, there is a hope for redemption and peace. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of December, when the wind whispers through the trees and the snow blankets the earth in silence, I catch a faint echo of those sorrowful whispers carried by the breeze, a haunting reminder of the night we faced the ghosts in the storm and helped them find their way home. Story number 3. Ghosts in the Storm. I still remember that night in 1978 like it was yesterday. The bitter cold of the Indiana winter seeping into my bones as I navigated the treacherous highway with my fellow truckers. My name is Jack Reynolds, and I was driving a semi-hauling freight across the state, eager to reach our destination before the forecasted snowstorm hit. Little did I know, that journey would etch itself into my memory as one of the most harrowing experiences of my life. We were a convoy of 5 trucks, traveling in formation for safety against the impending storm. The sky had been growing darker by the hour, heavy clouds gathering ominously on the horizon. As night fell, visibility plummeted, and the first flakes of snow began to fall, quickly escalating into a relentless blizzard. The wind howled through the gaps in our cabins, making it nearly impossible to hear anything beyond the roar of the storm. By midnight, the storm was in full fury. The highway stretched out before us, a ribbon of black asphalt swallowed by whiteout conditions. We were miles from the nearest town, isolated and vulnerable against the wrath of nature. The radio crackled with updates, urging us to find shelter or risk being stranded indefinitely. My heart pounded as I glanced at the other drivers, their faces etched with worry and exhaustion. It was then that I saw them, shadowy figures moving through the blinding snow, their outlines barely discernible against the swirling white. At first, I thought it was a mirage, a trick of the storm playing tricks on my weary mind. But as I squinted through the windshield, I realized with growing horror that they were real, tall, ghostly apparitions trudging through the snow, their faces obscured by the darkness. "Did you see that?" I called out to the driver beside me, Mike Thompson, his eyes wide with fear. He nodded silently, gripping the steering wheel tighter. "Yeah, I saw them. Weird as hell." We all stared out into the storm, trying to make sense of the inexplicable sight. The figures moved with purpose, their steps steady despite the ferocious wind and deep snowdrifts. One of them paused, turning its head toward our convoy, eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. A chill ran down my spine as an overwhelming sense of dread settled over me. Without warning, the leader of the apparitions raised a hand, signaling us to stop. My mind raced. Ghosts directing traffic? It was absurd. Yet there was an undeniable presence, a silent command that left us paralyzed with fear. The figures began to advance, their movements synchronized and unnerving. "Stay back," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the storm. But it was too late. One of the trucks ahead skidded on the ice, losing control and careening off the road. The driver swore, slamming the brakes, but the truck couldn't stop in time, plunging into a snowdrift and coming to a rest just inches from the ghostly figures. Panic erupted among us as the other drivers tried to avoid the wreckage. But visibility was too poor. Soon, we were all stuck, surrounded by the relentless storm and the spectral presence that seemed to guard the highway. Hours passed in agonizing silence, broken only by the howling wind and the occasional muffled scream from the stranded truck. As dawn broke, the storm began to subside, revealing the devastation we had endured. The highway was littered with abandoned vehicles, their drivers never to return. It was then that we discovered the horrifying truth. An old newspaper clipping found in the wreckage told the story of a similar blizzard years earlier, where a convoy of trucks had been caught in a deadly storm, resulting in the deaths of dozens of drivers. The road had since been haunted by the restless spirits of those lost souls, doomed to guide and warn travelers against the treacherous conditions. The realization hit me hard. The apparitions we had encountered were the very spirits of the tragic accident, forever bound to the highway they couldn't escape. They weren't malevolent, but rather desperate to prevent others from meeting the same fate. The spectral figures were guardians, their eerie presence a constant reminder of the price of ignoring nature's fury. Weeks after that night, I still struggle with the memories, the screams in the storm, the ghostly apparitions, and the haunting footprints leading back to our cabin weigh heavily on my mind. My wife, Karen, and I moved away from the area shortly after, unable to shake the fear and sorrow that lingered. But the story of that night spread, becoming a local legend whispered among truckers and residents alike. Years later, I still find myself haunted by the red eyes I saw in the storm, their silent plea echoing in my dreams. The highway stands as a memorial to those lost, a chilling reminder of the night when ghosts walked the snowy roads of Indiana. Sometimes, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint echo of those restless spirits, urging me to remember their sacrifice and honor their memory. Story number 4. Screams in the Snowstorm. Winter in the Colorado Rockies is both breathtaking and unforgiving. The snow blankets everything in a serene, white silence, transforming the dense forests into ethereal wonderlands. My name is Michael Thompson, and this is the story of the night my family and I encountered something beyond our understanding during a relentless snowstorm. We had always cherished our annual winter retreat to our secluded cabin nestled deep within the mountains. My wife, Laura, and our 2 children, Emma and Jack, looked forward to these trips as a chance to disconnect from the chaos of everyday life and reconnect with nature. This year, however, our peaceful escape took a dark and terrifying turn. It was mid-January when the storm hit. We arrived on the first day, greeted by clear skies and crisp air. The cabin stood sturdy against the elements, its wooden exterior promising warmth and safety. We spent the day unpacking, setting up our gear, and enjoying the tranquility that only a remote winter landscape can offer. As night fell, we gathered around the fireplace, sharing stories and sipping hot cocoa, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. By the second night, the weather had worsened. Dark clouds loomed overhead, and the wind began to howl through the pines, carrying with it the promise of a fierce snowstorm. Laura and I decided to stay inside, securing the doors and windows against the biting cold. Emma and Jack were tucked into their beds, their breaths visible in the frosty air. It was well past midnight when we first heard it, a distant, guttural scream echoing through the forest. The sound was chilling, reverberating through the cabin's walls like a ghostly lament. Laura grabbed her blanket, her eyes wide with fear. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I nodded, my heart pounding. It's probably just the wind or an animal caught in the storm. But the screams persisted, growing louder and more desperate with each passing hour. Every time the howls echoed through the night, the snowfall outside seemed to intensify, the flakes piling higher against the windows until they obscured our view entirely. The once comforting sound of the storm now felt menacing, as if something malevolent was trying to break through the barriers of our sanctuary. Determined to maintain some semblance of normalcy, I tried to reassure the kids, distracting them with stories and games. Laura and I huddled together, the weight of the unknown pressing down on us. Sleep became elusive, our minds racing with questions about the source of those haunting screams. Around 3 a.m., the most intense scream yet pierced the silence, followed by a series of sharp knocks on the front door. Laura and I exchanged terrified glances. "I think we need to see what's going on," she said, her voice trembling. I grabbed a flashlight and cautiously approached the door, the snowstorm outside making visibility nearly impossible. Each knock seemed to come from within the cabin itself. Yet when I opened the door, there was nothing, only an impenetrable wall of snow and darkness. The footprints leading up to the door were fresh and strange. Unlike any animal tracks we had seen before, they seemed to start from within the cabin, as if the entity causing the screams was attempting to enter. Confusion and fear overwhelmed me. "Laura, look at these footprints. They're leading from the back of the house to the window in our bedroom." She stepped closer, her face pale. "What does that mean? How did they get inside?" Before I could respond, the screams began again, more frantic and sorrowful than before. The snowstorm outside reached its peak, the wind howling like a chorus of lost souls. I felt a presence in the room, an oppressive force that made it hard to breathe. The temperature seemed to drop even further, frost forming on the edges of the windows despite the fire's warmth. Desperate for answers, we decided to investigate the footprints. Armed with our flashlights, Laura and I followed the trail leading to our bedroom window. The snow was thick, making each step a struggle, but we pressed on, driven by a mix of fear and determination. As we approached the window, the screams crescendoed, filling the room with an overwhelming sense of dread. Peering through the snow-covered glass, we saw nothing, no sign of a person or animal. But just as we were about to turn away, two glowing red eyes appeared in the darkness outside, staring directly into our room. The eyes burned with an unnatural intensity, and a chill ran down my spine. "What the hell is that?" I whispered, unable to tear my gaze away. The eyes blinked, and the figure behind them began to take shape, a shadowy form cloaked in darkness, its presence both terrifying and sorrowful. It extended a hand towards the window, as if pleading for something beyond our comprehension. The screams ceased abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed in on us from all sides. We backed away, hearts racing, as the figure slowly dissipated into the snowstorm. The footprints leading back to the window vanished without a trace, leaving us standing in the cold. Haunted by the encounter, Laura grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to leave, now." But the storm had grown too fierce, the roads impassable. We were trapped, alone with the lingering presence of whatever had visited us that night. Sleep returned reluctantly, but the memory of those red eyes and the shadowy figure haunted our dreams, a constant reminder of the unknown forces that lurk in the frozen wilderness. When the storm finally subsided, relief washed over us, but the mystery remained. Search teams combed the surrounding area, finding no evidence of intruders or explanations for the strange phenomena we had experienced. The footprints leading to our cabin were the only clue, baffling investigators and leaving us with more questions than answers. To this day, we don't know what we encountered that night. Some say it was a restless spirit. Others believe it was a creature of the forest, driven by some ancient sorrow. Whatever it was, the experience left an indelible mark on our family, a testament to the eerie and inexplicable mysteries that the winter wilderness can hold. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of December, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I can almost hear those haunting screams carried by the breeze, a chilling reminder of the night we faced the unknown in the heart of the Colorado mountains. Story number 5. Buried in the Snow. Winter in Sweden is both beautiful and merciless. The snow blankets everything in a serene, white silence, transforming the landscape into an unrecognizable expanse of ice and frost. My name is Lars Eriksson, and what I'm about to recount is an experience that forever altered my understanding of survival and the unseen forces that dwell within the frozen wilderness. It was the winter of 2006, a particularly harsh season that saw temperatures plummet to a bone-chilling -30 degrees Celsius. I had always been drawn to the solitude and challenge of the Swedish mountains, so when the opportunity arose to participate in an off-trail snowmobile expedition, I didn't hesitate. The plan was simple: navigate through the untouched Ural Mountains, document the untouched beauty, and return before the worst of the storm hit. Our group consisted of 5 experienced snowmobilers, each with a deep respect for the unforgiving terrain. We set out in early December, the sky a dull gray that promised more snow. The first few days were uneventful, the monotony of the endless white broken only by the occasional sighting of wildlife or the distant howl of a lone wolf. As we ventured deeper into the mountains, the isolation grew, the feeling of being utterly alone with nothing but the snow and ice for company. On the 10th day, a fierce blizzard descended upon us with little warning. The wind howled like a living creature, and the visibility dropped to near zero. We struggled to maintain our course, the snow piling up against our snowmobiles, making progress agonizingly slow. Exhaustion set in, both physical and mental, as we battled the elements with dwindling hope of making it back before nightfall. It was on the 12th day that disaster struck. A sudden gust of wind overturned my snowmobile, sending me tumbling into a hidden ravine. The impact was jarring, the cold seeping into my bones as I struggled to free myself. My comrades rushed to my aid, but the storm had intensified, making rescue efforts perilously difficult. As the blizzard raged on, we decided to set up a temporary shelter, a small clearing where we could huddle together and wait for the storm to pass. Night fell swiftly, the temperature dropping even further. I found myself alone, isolated from the group as the snow continued to bury us deeper. The cabin we had taken refuge in was small and cramped, barely providing protection against the relentless cold. As I settled into a makeshift bed of blankets and sleeping bags, exhaustion overcame me, and I drifted into a restless sleep. That's when I first heard it, a faint whispering that seemed to echo through the cabin. First, I dismissed it as the wind finding its way through the cracks. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Don't sleep," they urged, their tone desperate and pleading. My heart pounded as I sat up, scanning the dimly lit room for any sign of movement. But there was nothing, no one else in the cabin. No indication of any presence beyond the snowstorm outside. The whispers continued each night, growing more persistent and sinister. "Keep trying to live," they urged, as if someone or something was trying to communicate with me from the other side. Sleep became a torment, the whispers seeping into my dreams and blurring the line between reality and nightmare. I became increasingly paranoid, convinced that I was being watched, that the spirits of the mountains were reaching out to me. 2 weeks into my ordeal, hope began to fade. My supplies were running low, and the extreme cold made every movement a struggle. The whispers had taken on a darker tone, filled with anger and frustration. "Don't give up," they pleaded one night, but the exhaustion and desperation made it hard to hold on to hope. One particularly brutal night, the whispers culminated in a cacophony of voices, their pleas echoing through the cabin like a haunting melody. I lay there, frozen and terrified. As the temperature plummeted even further, my body began to shut down, the cold numbing my limbs and clouding my mind. It felt as though the very essence of the mountain was trying to claim me, to draw me into its icy embrace. But amidst the chaos of the whispers, a single, clear message pierced through the noise. "Keep fighting." It was a beacon of hope, a lifeline that anchored me to reality, summoning every ounce of strength. I forced myself to stay awake, to keep pushing forward despite the overwhelming odds. the whispers began to fade, replaced by a profound silence that felt both comforting and ominous. Days turned into weeks, and my body continued to weaken, but the whispering had ceased entirely. I found myself in a state of near hallucination, my mind playing tricks on me as I struggled to maintain consciousness. It was during one of these foggy moments that I noticed something on the horizon, a faint glimmer of light cutting through the endless white. With the last remnants of my strength, I mustered the will to move, crawling towards the light with determination born of desperation. The journey was agonizing, every inch of progress a battle against the relentless cold and my own failing body. But the light grew brighter, guiding me through the treacherous terrain and giving me the hope I so desperately needed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I emerged from the storm into a small clearing where a search and rescue team had established a beacon to signal their location. They found me barely conscious, the 2 months of isolation and the extreme conditions having taken their toll. My only words were fragmented memories of the whispers and the unyielding will to survive. The doctors were baffled by my survival. After 2 months trapped in a snow-covered cabin with minimal supplies and enduring temperatures that should have been fatal, I was alive but forever changed. The psychological scars were the deepest, the memories of the whispers haunting me long after the physical wounds had healed. Looking back, I can only wonder what truly happened during those long, frozen nights. Were the whispers mere hallucinations born of extreme isolation and cold? Or was there something more? An unseen presence that reached out to help me find the strength to survive? The truth remains elusive, lost in the depths of the snowy wilderness where I was buried alive. Winter has a way of testing the limits of human endurance, pushing us to the brink of despair and beyond. My experience at Dyatlov Pass stands as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the mysterious forces that linger in the shadows of the natural world. Sometimes, in the most desperate of times, the faintest whispers can be the beacon that guides us through the darkest of nights, reminding us to keep fighting, to keep living. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of December, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint echo of those whispers carried by the breeze. A haunting reminder of the night I listened to the voices in the snow and found the will to survive.